My name is Ava Reynolds, and I was 30 years old when I returned home from university to find a sold sign on my parents' front lawn. I stood in the pouring rain watching my childhood home, knowing I had nowhere to go. My parents had sold the house, packed my life into 4 wet cardboard boxes, and left for a luxury retirement in Cabo without telling me. When I called my mother in a panic asking about the $45,000 I had entrusted to her for my student loans, she laughed. She told me that money was a reimbursement for raising me, and hung up. I sat on the curb next to my soaking wet belongings, feeling my life crumble. 2 years and 280 panic calls later, my phone lit up with my mother's name again. But this time, I was not the victim. Before I tell you how I turned their betrayal into their worst nightmare, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to rebuild your life from scratch after the people who were supposed to love you burned it to the ground. The rain in Boston does not just fall, it stings. That was the only thing I could feel as the taxi taillights faded into the gray mist, leaving me standing on the sidewalk of the house I had grown up in. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late May. I had just finished the last grueling exam for my master's in accounting. I was exhausted, broke, and running on 3 hours of sleep and cheap coffee. All I wanted was to unlock the front door, drop my heavy bags, and sleep for a week in my old bedroom. But as I turned from the street to the driveway, my brain short-circuited. There was a sign planted in the middle of the perfectly manicured lawn, a wooden post with a hanging sign that swung violently in the wind. Sold, not for sale, not coming soon, sold. I blinked, wiping water from my eyelashes, thinking maybe I was hallucinating from exhaustion. I walked up the driveway, my suitcase wheels dragging heavily on the wet pavement. The house looked the same. The beige siding, the dark shutters, the hydrangeas my mother Cynthia obsessed over. But the driveway was empty. My father David's SUV was gone. My mother's sedan was gone. I reached the front porch and fumbled for my key. My hands were shaking partly from the cold and partly from a rising sense of dread that started in my stomach and spread to my chest. I jammed the key into the lock and twisted. It did not turn. I tried again, jiggling it, pulling it back slightly. Nothing. It felt like the wrong key, but I knew it wasn't. This was the key I had carried on my keychain since I was 16. I knocked on the door. Then I pounded. Mom. Dad, it's me. Open up. Silence. Then I heard heavy footsteps inside. The deadbolt slid back with a heavy clunk. I stepped back, ready to ask why they changed the locks without telling me. The door swung open. A man I had never seen before stood there. He was wearing a bathrobe and holding a cup of coffee, looking at me with hostility. Can I help you? I stared at him. Who are you? Where are my parents? He looked me up and down, taking in my wet hair, my cheap coat, and the battered suitcase. I think you have the wrong house, lady. I bought this place 3 weeks ago. The previous owners moved out. No. I shook my head, water flying from my hair. That is impossible. My name is Ava Reynolds. David and Cynthia Reynolds are my parents. I live here. You do not live here, he said, his voice hard. We closed on the deed 20 days ago. Your parents said the house was vacant. Now get off my porch before I call the police for trespassing. Wait, I pleaded, putting my foot in the door before he could close it. Please. They did not tell me anything. Did they leave a note? Did they say where they were going? The man sighed, annoyed. He pointed toward the side of the driveway near the garbage cans. There is some junk over there they left behind. They said if their daughter showed up to tell her to handle it. Now move. He slammed the door. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I heard the deadbolt slide home. I walked slowly down the porch steps, my legs feeling like lead. I looked where he had pointed. There, sitting right on the curb next to the trash bins, were 4 cardboard boxes. They were not even sealed with tape. The flaps were open, and the rain was soaking straight through. I ran over and looked inside. It was my life. My high school yearbooks. My undergraduate diploma, my winter coats, the photo albums I had cherished. Everything was thrown in haphazardly. A framed picture of me and my brother Ethan from a family vacation was shattered, the glass mixed in with my sweaters. Stuck to the side of one sodden box was a yellow sticky note. The ink was running from the rain, but I could still read my mother's distinctive, loopy handwriting. Ava, here's your stuff. Good luck. I stood there in the rain reading those 6 words over and over again. Good luck. Not we love you. Not call us. Just good luck. My phone was buried in my pocket. I pulled it out, my wet fingers struggling to unlock the screen. I dialed my mother's number. It rang and rang. I called again. Finally, on the 3rd try, the call connected. But instead of her voice, I heard music. Loud, festive trumpet music, mariachi music, and laughter. Lots of laughter. Hello? My mother's voice shouted over the noise. Who is this, Mom? It's Ava. I'm at the house. Or, I am at the house you sold. What is going on? Where are you? There was a pause and the music quieted slightly, as if she had stepped away from the party. Oh, Ava. You are back already. I thought your semester ended next week. I must have mixed up the dates. You sold the house, I screamed into the phone, ignoring the neighbors who might be watching. You sold the house and you did not tell me I am standing in the rain with my stuff in boxes on the curb. A stranger just threatened to call the cops on me. Calm down, Ava. Do not be so dramatic. It is unbecoming. We got a cash offer we could not refuse. $850,000. Can you believe it? The market is hot right now. Your father and I decided it was time to retire early. We deserve it. You deserve it. I repeated, my voice trembling. You left me homeless. I have nowhere to go. I have no apartment. I was supposed to stay with you until I found a job. You are 30 years old, Ava. 30. Most people your age have their own homes. We are done parenting. We did our time. It is time for you to stand on your own 2 feet. We are in Cabo, darling. It is a second honeymoon. The margaritas are to die for. I felt a wave of nausea. They were in Cabo. They were drinking margaritas while I was standing in the mud. But then a colder, sharper thought pierced through my panic. The money. Mom, I said, my voice dropping. What about the money? What money? She asked, sounding bored. The $45,000. The money I sent you every month from my internships and my part-time jobs for the last 4 years. The money you promised to keep in the joint account so I could pay off my student loans in one lump sum when I graduated. That money. There was a silence on the line. A long, heavy silence. Then my mother let out a short, cruel laugh. Oh, that money. Well, let us call that a reimbursement fee. Reimbursement. I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. For raising you, Ava. Do you know how expensive you were? Braces, piano lessons you quit, food, clothing, electricity. 45,000 hardly covers the 18 years of burden you put on us. We used that money to upgrade our flights to first class and buy a lifetime timeshare membership down here. Consider it your final contribution to the family. My knees gave out. I actually fell onto the wet pavement, the water soaking instantly through my jeans. You stole it. That was my student loan money. I have debt, Mom. I have interest to pay. You cannot just take it. It was in a joint account, Ava. My name was on it. Legally it is mine. And morally you owe us. Now stop ruining my vacation with your whining. Figure it out. Handle it. That is what adults do. The line went dead. I sat there on the curb, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. I looked at the boxes. My college diploma was in there somewhere, probably ruined by the water. I had worked 2 jobs while studying full-time to save that money. I had eaten instant noodles and skipped social events to send those checks home, trusting them to keep it safe. And they had spent it on first-class tickets to Mexico. I was 30 years old. I had a master's degree in accounting. And I had exactly $42 in my checking account. I was homeless. I was in debt. And I was completely alone. I dragged the soggy boxes under the shelter of a large oak tree near the sidewalk, trying to salvage what I could. My clothes were soaked. The books were warped. I managed to fit the dry items into my suitcase, abandoning the rest. I could not carry 4 boxes. I had to leave my yearbooks. I had to leave the trophies from my high school debate team. I had to leave the shattered picture frame. I walked to the main road, dragging my heavy suitcase. I found a bus stop with a small plastic shelter and huddled inside. I used an app to find the cheapest motel within a 10-mile radius. There was a place called the Blue Star Inn near the industrial park. $40 a night. It would leave me with $2. I took the bus. The driver looked at me with pity, but did not say anything. When I got to the motel, the clerk behind bulletproof glass took my cash and slid a key across the counter without making eye contact. The room smelled like stale smoke and mildew. The carpet was sticky, but it was dry. I stripped off my wet clothes and curled up on the lumpy mattress, pulling the thin blanket up to my chin. I did not sleep that night. I stared at the water stains on the ceiling, and I made a plan. I was done crying. I was done begging. They wanted me to handle it, I would handle it. I spent the next 3 months living out of my old Honda Civic, which I had parked in long-term storage near the university. I retrieved it the next day. It was the only thing they hadn't taken, probably because it wasn't worth anything. I showered at a Planet Fitness using a $10 monthly membership. I used the free Wi-Fi at the public library to apply for jobs. I ate peanut butter sandwiches and dollar store canned soup. I did not call them. I did not text them. When my birthday came and went without a single message, I did not care. I was too busy studying for my CPA exam. I was too busy working double shifts as a night auditor at a hotel to save up for a deposit on a studio apartment. I buried Ava, the victim, in that motel room. The Ava that emerged was cold. She was logical. And she was hungry. The dial tone buzzed in my ear like a mosquito I could not swat away. I sat on the curb outside the Blue Star Inn, my suitcase wedged between my knees, watching my battery percentage drop to 4%. I had already spent my last $2 on a bottle of water. I had no options left. I pressed call on Ethan's contact again. This time he answered. "What do you want, Ava?" His voice was thick, like he had just woken up from a nap, or had a mouthful of food. "Ethan," I said, my voice cracking despite my best efforts to sound steady. "I am at a motel near the industrial park. I need help. Mom and Dad left me with nothing. They took the money. I just need a place to crash for a few nights, just until I get paid from my new job." There was a shuffling sound on the other end, then a heavy sigh. "Look, Ava, I don't know what to tell you. You are the oldest. You are supposed to have this figured out. I am homeless, Ethan. I am begging you. You have that 2-bedroom apartment in Seaport, the one Dad pays for. There is plenty of room." Actually, a female voice cut in sharp and nasal. "There is no room. Nia, my brother's fiancée. I had helped her rewrite her final papers in college. I had introduced her to the recruiter who got her the internship she was currently failing at." "Nia, please," I said. "I am desperate. It is just for a few days. I will sleep on the floor. I will be gone before you wake up." I heard the sound of ice clinking in a glass. "Listen to me, Ava. We are planning a wedding. A very expensive, very high-profile wedding. We are curating an aesthetic. We are building a vibe. And frankly, having a homeless, unemployed spinster sleeping on our floor ruins the vibe." "I am not a spinster," I whispered. "I am your future sister-in-law." "Not if you keep acting like a charity case," Nia snapped. "Your parents told us everything. They said you are toxic. They said you are bad luck. And honestly, looking at your situation, they were right. You attract misery, Ava. And I do not want your bad juju infecting my wedding planning. We are manifesting abundance here. We do not have space for failure." "Ethan!" I called out. "Ethan, are you going to let her talk to me like that?" I heard my brother clear his throat. "She is right, Ava. You need to figure this out on your own. It is time you grew up. Besides, Nia's parents are coming this weekend. It would be embarrassing to explain why you are on the couch. Just try a shelter, or sleep in your car. It is not that cold. It was 50 degrees and raining. Do not call us again until you have fixed your life, Nia said. We do not associate with losers. The line went dead. I stared at the black screen of my phone. The rejection did not make me cry this time. It cauterized the wound. It burned away the last shred of hope I had that my family was just misunderstood or stressed. They were not misunderstood. They were monsters. I walked 3 miles in the rain to the long-term parking lot where my 2005 Honda Civic was stored. I used the emergency key hidden in the wheel well to open the door. The air inside was stale, smelling of old French fries and dust, but it was dry. That car became my entire world for the next 3 months. Ethan was wrong. It was cold. Boston winters do not care if you are homeless. They do not care if you are sleeping in a back seat with every piece of clothing you own layered on your body. The first night I parked in a Walmart lot, but security knocked on my window at 2 in the morning and told me to move. I learned quickly that invisibility was my only asset. I found quiet residential streets where I could park late and leave early. I learned to rotate my spot so the neighbors would not call the cops. I created a routine. Survival is just a series of tasks you have to complete to see the sun rise again. I woke up at 5 every morning, usually because the cold had seeped into my bones so deeply that my teeth were chattering. I would drive to the 24-hour Planet Fitness 2 towns over. I paid $10 a month for a membership I could barely afford just so I could have a hot shower. There is a specific kind of shame in showering at a gym when you have nowhere to go afterwards. You scrub your skin until it is raw, trying to wash away the feeling of the car seat upholstery. You dry your hair under the hand dryer because you do not have a blow dryer. You put on your only suit, the one you managed to save from the rain, and you pretend you are just like everyone else. I brushed my teeth in the Starbucks bathroom down the street. I bought the cheapest black coffee they had just to get the Wi-Fi password. I sat in the corner for 8 hours a day, applying to every accounting firm in the state. I nursed that single cup of coffee until it was cold, and bitter, terrified that the barista would kick me out. Food was a math problem. I had $42. A loaf of bread was $2. Peanut butter was $3. That was a week of meals if I was careful. I learned which gas stations had free hot water so I could make instant soup packets. I learned to ignore the gnawing emptiness in my stomach when I walked past restaurants. But the hardest part wasn't the hunger or the cold. It was the silence. I spent hours staring at the ceiling of my car, watching the condensation from my breath freeze on the windows. I thought about Ethan and Nia in their warm apartment, sleeping in a bed paid for by the money my parents stole from me. I thought about my parents in Cabo drinking cocktails on a beach. I thought about how easy it would be to just stop. To turn on the engine in a closed garage. To let the cold take me. But then I would remember Nia's voice. We do not associate with losers. And rage would flare up in my chest, hot and violent. It kept me warm when the heater failed. It kept me moving when my legs were heavy with exhaustion. I was not going to die in a Honda Civic. I was not going to let them win. I was going to survive. And then I was going to destroy them. I stopped looking for entry-level jobs. I stopped apologizing in my cover letters. I rewrote my resume. I highlighted my forensic skills. I emphasized my ability to find hidden assets. I turned my trauma into a weapon. I applied to Henderson and Associates, the most ruthless forensic accounting firm in Chicago. I used my last $50 to pay for a rush passport renewal and a background check. When Mr. Henderson interviewed me over Zoom, sitting in the back of the library with a blurred background to hide the stacks of books, he asked me why I wanted the job. I looked him dead in the eye. Because I hate thieves, I said. And I will find every penny they try to hide. He hired me on the spot. I drove my Honda Civic to Chicago. I slept in rest stops. I ate nothing but crackers for 2 days. But when I walked into that glass tower on my first day, wearing my one good suit and a pair of shoes I had superglued the soles back onto, I was not Ava the victim anymore. I was Ava the hunter, and I was starving. 2 years is a long time to hold your breath. It is 730 days of waking up before the sun rises. It is 104 weeks of working until your eyes burn and your fingers cramp. It is 17,520 hours of burying the girl who cried in a Honda Civic and building a woman made of steel and mathematics. The private elevator chime was a soft, expensive sound that signaled my arrival on the 45th floor. The doors slid open, revealing the panoramic view of the Chicago skyline, gray and imposing against the winter sky. I stepped out onto the marble floor, the sharp click of my $3,000 heels echoing through the silent corridor. "Good morning, Ms. Reynolds." The receptionist, a young man fresh out of Yale, straightened his tie as I walked past. I nodded once, not breaking my stride. I did not carry a purse anymore. I carried a leather briefcase that cost more than the tuition for my first semester of grad school. Inside were the audits that made grown men in boardrooms sweat. I walked into my corner office and closed the glass door. The silence was absolute. This was my sanctuary. This was the fortress I had built with nothing but rage and spreadsheets. My name was on the door in frosted lettering. Ava Reynolds, Senior Partner, Head of Forensic Accounting. In the corporate world, they called people like me fixers. In the darker corners of finance, they called us hunters. I did not just balance books, I dissected them. I found the money that husbands hid from their wives during divorces. I found the assets that CEOs siphoned into offshore shell companies. I found the truth that numbers tried to hide. I sat down behind my desk, a slab of imported mahogany that felt cool under my fingertips. I opened my laptop, ready to dismantle a pharmaceutical executive who had been embezzling charity funds. I was calm. I was in control. I was untouchable. And then my personal phone vibrated against the wood of the desk. It was not a call. It was a singular, urgent notification tone, the specific sound I had assigned to my identity theft protection service. I froze. My hand hovered over the device. For a split second, I was back in the rain in Boston, holding a soaking wet box. The fear was a phantom limb aching even though it was gone. I picked up the phone. The screen was bright red with a warning banner. Alert. High priority. New credit inquiry detected. I unlocked the phone and opened the app. My eyes scanned the details, my brain processing the data faster than I could breathe. Institution: Boston National Bank. Loan type: mortgage refinance. Personal line of credit. Amount requested: $150,000. Applicant name: Ava Reynolds. Co-signer: David Reynolds. I stared at the name. David Reynolds. My father. The man who had not called me in 2 years. The man who had sold my home out from under me. The man who was supposed to be sipping margaritas in a Cabo retirement villa funded by my stolen savings. I scrolled down to the applicant details. They had used my social security number. They had used my old driver's license number, which they must have kept a copy of. They were trying to take out a loan in my name. A cold, hard smile touched my lips. It was not a smile of happiness. It was the smile of a predator realizing the prey has just stepped into the trap. They were not in Cabo anymore. You do not apply for a loan using your estranged daughter's stolen identity if you are sitting on a beach with a drink in your hand. You do that when you are desperate. You do that when the money is gone. I turned to my computer monitors. I minimized the pharmaceutical audit. That could wait. This was personal. I logged into the bank's portal using my professional credentials. As a forensic accountant, I had access to databases that the average person did not even know existed. I pulled up the loan application. It was sloppy, desperate. They had forged my signature electronically. It looked nothing like mine. I needed to know where they were. Cabo was thousands of miles away. If they were applying for a loan here in the States, they had to be on U.S. soil. I ran a trace on the IP address used to submit the application. The digital footprint was faint, but I was better. I routed the signal through my tracking software. Processing. The map on my screen zoomed in. It bypassed Mexico. It bypassed Boston. It hovered over the Midwest. It zoomed in on Illinois. My heart hammered against my ribs. Illinois. The map pinpointed a location just outside the city limits. Cicero, a gritty industrial suburb near the airport. I clicked for the specific address. 402 West Ogden Avenue, the Bluebird Motor Inn. I pulled up the street view. It was a rundown motel with peeling paint and bars on the windows. The kind of place where people paid by the hour or by the week when they had nowhere else to go. They were here. My parents, David and Cynthia Reynolds, the people who thought they were too good for a 3-bedroom colonial in the suburbs. The people who flew first class with my money were living in a $40 a night motel in Cicero, Illinois. I leaned back in my chair, swiveling to look out at the lake. The water was steel gray, choppy, and cold. It made sense. $850,000 sounds like a fortune when you have nothing. But when you are arrogant, when you buy timeshares and boats, and upgrade every flight when you don't invest and you don't budget because you think you are special, that money burns fast. 2 years of luxury living. 2 years of thinking they had gotten away with it. And now the well was dry. And they had come for the only asset they thought they still owned. Me. They must have found me online. My promotion to senior partner had been announced in the business journals last month. My LinkedIn profile was public. They saw the suit. They saw the title. They saw the Chicago location. They didn't see a daughter. They saw a piggy bank. They saw a credit score they could ruin to save themselves. They assumed I was still the same girl who would cry and hand over her paycheck. They assumed I would be too afraid to stop them. They were wrong. I looked at the pending loan application on my screen. $150,000. They were trying to leverage my credit to pay off their debts, or maybe to start another scam. It didn't matter. I moved my mouse to the red button on the screen. Deny application. Report fraud. I clicked it. The screen flashed green. Application rejected. Fraud alert sent to credit bureaus. I waited. It took exactly 3 minutes. My personal cell phone began to ring. It was a number I did not recognize, but the area code was 708. Cicero. I watched it ring. The vibration buzzed against the mahogany desk like an angry hornet. They were panicking. They were staring at a computer screen in a dirty motel room, seeing the word rejected and realizing their lifeline had just been cut. The phone stopped ringing. Then it started again immediately. I picked it up and silenced it, placing it face down on the desk. I turned back to my work monitors. I opened a new file. I named it Reynolds Investigation. If they wanted to play games with finances, they had come to the Grandmaster. I wasn't just going to stop the loan. I was going to find out exactly where every cent of my inheritance and my house money had gone. I was going to audit their entire lives. I typed in their names. I pulled up their credit reports. It was a bloodbath. Maxed out credit cards, repossession orders for a luxury boat in Mexico, a lien from the IRS for unpaid capital gains tax on the house sale. They weren't just broke, they were drowning. They had committed tax evasion. They had fled the country to avoid debts, and now they had snuck back in to commit identity theft. My phone vibrated again. A text message this time. Ava, please pick up. It is Mom. We are in trouble. I stared at the word Mom. It looked foreign. A word from a language I no longer spoke. I did not reply. I needed them desperate. I needed them terrified. Another text came through. Your father's heart medication is expensive. We don't have insurance anymore. We are in Chicago. Please. We know you have money. I felt a flicker of the old Ava, the one who would have panicked at the mention of her father's health. But then I remembered the rain. I remembered the stranger threatening to call the police. I remembered the laugh when I asked about my student loan money. They didn't care about my survival then. They only cared about their survival now. I pressed the intercom button on my desk phone. Chloe. I said, my voice steady and cool. Yes, Ms. Reynolds. I need you to contact the security desk in the lobby. I am expecting visitors sometime in the next 24 hours. An older couple. They will look distressed. They might claim to be my parents. Do you want me to put them on the guest list? Chloe asked. No, I said. I want you to tell security that if they show up, they are not to be allowed past the turnstiles. But tell them to give the couple a message. What is the message? Tell them to meet me at the diner on Wabash and 8th, tomorrow at noon. And tell them to bring their tax returns. There was a pause. Chloe was used to my strange requests, but this was specific even for me. Their tax returns. Yes. Tell them if they want to talk to me, they need to bring every financial document they have. Understood, Ms. Reynolds. I hung up. I picked up my cell phone again. 7 missed calls now. They were spiraling. They were trapped in a cheap motel room, realizing that the daughter they threw away was the only person on earth who could save them. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. I looked down at the city, at the cars moving like ants far below. Somewhere out there in the gray sprawl of the suburbs, my parents were sweating. They wanted a reunion. I would give them one. But it wasn't going to be the tearful hug they expected. It was going to be an interrogation. I adjusted the cuffs of my $3,000 blazer. I checked my reflection in the glass. The woman staring back was sharp, angular, and hard. She didn't look like a victim. I went back to my desk. I had work to do. I had to build a case file. If I was going to meet them, I wasn't going to bring a checkbook. I was going to bring an indictment. The hunt had officially begun. The button on my screen turned gray as the fraud alert processed. Application denied. It took exactly 4 seconds for the signal to travel from my secure terminal in a Chicago skyscraper to the banking servers in Charlotte, and then bounce back to a cheap motel room in Cicero. 4 seconds to cut off the oxygen supply to the people who had tried to suffocate me. I sat back in my leather chair and waited. I did not have to wait long. My personal cell phone, which I had placed face down on the mahogany desk, began to vibrate. It started as a low hum, a single buzz against the wood. Then it buzzed again, and again. Within 10 seconds, it was a continuous, angry rattle that shook the surface of the desk. I picked it up. The screen was lit up with a name I had not seen in 2 years. Mom. I watched the call timer count up to 30 seconds before it went to voicemail. Immediately, the screen went black, then lit up again. Mom. I let it ring. Then it was Dad. Then it was a number I did not recognize, presumably the motel landline. Then Mom again. Then Ethan. The notifications began to stack up on my lock screen like a collapsing tower. Missed call, missed call, missed call, new voicemail, new voicemail. I did not silence it. I wanted to see the magnitude of their desperation. I wanted to measure it. In my line of work, data is everything. The frequency of the calls, the frantic switching between numbers, the sheer volume of attempts, it all told a story. It told me they were not just looking for extra cash. They were in a corner and the walls were closing in. For the next hour, I worked on my pharmaceutical audit while my phone performed a death dance on the corner of my desk. Every time I glanced over, the number of missed calls had jumped. 50, 100, 200. By the time the sun began to dip behind the skyscrapers, casting long shadows across my office, the final tally was 280 missed calls. 280 times they tried to breach my fortress. 280 times they demanded my attention after 2 years of silence. And then there were the voicemails. 50 of them. My phone transcribed them automatically, scrolling text appearing in little gray bubbles. I did not need to listen to their voices to hear the tone. I could read the panic in the jagged syntax and the excessive punctuation. I clicked on the first one. It was from Cynthia. It had been left 3 minutes after I denied the loan. Ava, pick up the phone right now. I am standing at the front desk and my card was just declined. The man is saying there is a fraud alert. You need to call the bank and authorize the transaction immediately. It is embarrassing me. Do not play games, Ava. Fix this. I leaned back, steepling my fingers. Even in the face of financial ruin, her first instinct was not fear, but indignation. She was embarrassed. She was trying to commit a felony using my identity, and she was annoyed that I had inconvenienced her by stopping it. She truly believed that my credit, my name, and my life were just extensions of her property. I scrolled down. The tone shifted around voicemail number 10. This one was from David, my father. The transcription read, "Ava, please, we are not in Mexico anymore. We are in Chicago. We are at a motel near the airport, and they are threatening to kick us out if payment does not go through. Your mother is having palpitations. We need to see you. It is a matter of life and death. Just call us back. We just want to talk." Chicago. Seeing it confirmed in text made it real. They were physically here. They were less than 20 miles away from where I sat. The city that had been my sanctuary, the place where I had reinvented myself, was now infected. I felt a cold ripple of anger move through me. They had ruined Boston for me. They had turned my childhood home into a crime scene. Now they wanted to ruin Chicago too. But the most telling voicemail came later. It was number 50. It was from Ethan, my baby brother, the golden boy who had received a luxury apartment while I slept in a Honda Civic. The boy who had let his fiancée call me a loser while he stood by and said nothing. I pressed play on this one. I wanted to hear his voice. "Ava, you bitch!" His voice was shrill, cracking with a mixture of rage and terror. "You killed us! Do you hear me? You killed us!" The loan was approved and then it was gone. The IRS has a lien on Dad's pension. They froze the offshore accounts. They are tracking us. If we do not pay the back taxes by Friday, they are going to issue warrants. You have the money. We know you have it. Stop hiding. If Mom goes to jail, it is on you. Raft out, you coward. I let the message play out until the automated voice said, "End of messages." I sat in the silence of my 45th floor office, the city lights twinkling below me like diamonds. The IRS. That was the missing variable. That was why they had fled Cabo. That was why they were hiding in a motel in Cicero instead of staying at a luxury hotel downtown. They were running from the federal government. It wasn't just about bad spending habits. It was tax evasion. They had sold the house for nearly $1 million cash and likely never reported the capital gains. They had moved money offshore to avoid taxes. And now the Department of the Treasury had caught up with them. A lien on the pension, frozen accounts, warrants pending. They were radioactive, and they wanted to drag me into the reactor with them. They wanted me to co-sign a loan or give them cash, or let them use my identity to create a new financial footprint that the IRS couldn't track. They wanted to use my clean record to wash their dirty laundry. If I helped them, I would be an accomplice. I would be aiding and abetting federal fugitives. I would lose my CPA license. I would lose my partnership. I would lose everything I had built. And Ethan knew it. He didn't care. He just wanted a lifeboat, even if it meant drowning me to get it. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked at my reflection in the glass. The sharp cut of my blazer, the cold set of my eyes. 2 years ago, that voicemail would have broken me. I would have heard my brother calling me a bitch, and I would have crumbled. I would have heard my father pleading about life and death, and I would have rushed to save him. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I was a forensic accountant. I dealt in facts. And the facts were simple. Fact 1. They abandoned me. Fact 2. They stole $45,000 from me. Fact 3. They were currently attempting to commit identity fraud against me. Fact 4. They were being pursued by the IRS for tax evasion. There was no emotion in this equation. There was only leverage. They thought they were hunting me. They thought if they called enough times, if they threatened enough, if they guilt-tripped enough, I would snap back into my role as the obedient daughter. They didn't realize that by coming to Chicago, by using my social security number, and by admitting to IRS trouble on a recorded voicemail, they had just handed me the murder weapon. I picked up my phone. I did not call them back. Instead, I opened my encrypted email app. I drafted a message to my contact at the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. We had worked together on the Ponzi scheme case last year. Subject: possible lead on tax evasion, identity theft ring. Body: I have received communications regarding individuals attempting to secure fraudulent loans to evade federal liens. I have location data and recordings. Let's discuss. I saved the draft. I wasn't ready to send it yet. I needed to see them first. I needed to look them in the eye. I needed them to sign the paperwork that would legally sever me from their wreckage forever. I needed a confession. I looked at the time. It was late. The cleaning crew would be coming soon. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Cynthia. We are starving, Ava. We haven't eaten a real meal in 2 days. Please. I thought about the peanut butter sandwiches I ate in my car. I thought about the night I split a can of soup with my own shadow because I couldn't afford a spoon. I picked up my briefcase. I walked out of my office, locking the door behind me. Let them starve for one more night. It would make them easier to break tomorrow. The Greasy Spoon Diner on Wabash and 8th smelled of burnt bacon and stale cigarette smoke that had seeped into the walls decades ago. I sat in a booth with cracked red vinyl seats, my back to the door. I was wearing a gray hoodie I bought at a thrift store that morning and a pair of faded jeans. I had scrubbed off my expensive makeup and pulled my hair back into a messy bun. To the casual observer, I looked like exactly what my family expected me to be: a woman who had peaked at 30 and was slowly sliding into poverty. I checked my watch. It was a $10 plastic digital watch I had picked up at a pharmacy. My Rolex was safely locked in my office safe 40 blocks away. 12:10. They were late. Of course they were late. It was a power move. Even when they were drowning, even when they were begging, they had to make me wait. They had to remind me that my time was less valuable than theirs. The bell above the door jingled. I watched their reflection in the smudged window. They walked in like a parade of fallen royalty. My father David led the way. He looked thinner than I remembered, his skin possessing a grayish pallor beneath a fading artificial tan. He was wearing a linen suit that might have been expensive 5 years ago, but was now wrinkled and stained at the cuffs. My mother Cynthia followed. She was wearing oversized sunglasses indoors and clutching a Louis Vuitton tote bag. I knew immediately it was a fake. The stitching on the handle was uneven, and the leather didn't slouch right. It was a Canal Street knockoff, probably bought in a panic to maintain appearances. Trailing behind them were Ethan and Nia. Ethan looked exhausted, his eyes darting around the diner as if he expected the IRS to jump out from behind the counter. Nia, however, looked ready for war. She was wearing a bright pink tracksuit with jewelry layered on every finger, the gold flashing under the harsh fluorescent lights. They spotted me. I didn't stand up. I didn't wave. I just watched them approach. They slid into the booth opposite me. It was a tight squeeze. David and Cynthia took one side. Nia and Ethan took the chairs at the end. They looked out of place like peacocks in a landfill. Well, Cynthia said, pulling off her sunglasses to reveal eyes rimmed with red. You certainly picked a charming spot, Ava. I didn't know places like this still existed outside of truck stops. I'm on a budget, Mom, I said, keeping my voice low and flat. Coffee here is 99 cents. Nia snorted. She looked me up and down, her lip curling in a sneer that I remembered vividly from the phone call 2 years ago. She took in my hoodie, my lack of makeup, the plastic watch. Still poor as dirt, huh? She asked, leaning back and crossing her arms. I guess that master's degree didn't pay off like you thought it would. I stared at her. I didn't defend myself. I needed them to believe the lie. I needed them to think I was desperate so they would show their hand. It pays the bills, I said quietly. Barely from the looks of it, Nia laughed. She turned to Ethan and grabbed his hand, flashing a ring that I knew for a fact was cubic zirconia. God, babe, aren't you glad we didn't end up like this? It is sad, really. Ethan wouldn't meet my eyes. He was staring at the sticky syrup dispenser on the table. We are doing great, by the way, Nia continued, not waiting for a response. Ethan just got promoted. He is a regional manager now, making 6 figures. We are just here to help the family out of a jam because of some bureaucratic nonsense. We are essentially doing charity work today. I looked at Ethan. Regional manager. Last I checked his credit report 3 hours ago, he was listed as unemployed and had 3 maxed-out credit cards in collections. But I nodded. Congratulations, Ethan, I said. Yeah, thanks, he mumbled. Enough pleasantries, David snapped. He signaled for the waitress, but when she came over with a pot of coffee, he waved her away impatiently. We are not ordering. We are here on business. Business, I asked. Cynthia placed her fake bag on the table with a heavy thud. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Ava, we are in a bit of a situation. A temporary situation. It is all a misunderstanding, really. The government has frozen our assets because of a clerical error with the sale of the house. A clerical error, I repeated. Exactly, David said. Some idiot at the IRS pressed the wrong button. They flagged our accounts. We can't access our liquidity. It will be cleared up in a week or two, but until then, we are a little tight. A little tight, I thought. You are sleeping in a $40 motel and trying to steal my identity. So what do you want from me, I asked. I just told you I'm broke. I can't lend you money. We don't need your money, honey, Cynthia said, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness she used when she wanted something. We know you don't have any. We need your profile. My profile. Your credit profile, David clarified. Since you have been living frugally, we assume you have kept your credit score decent. We need to open a bridge loan, just a small line of credit to tide us over until the IRS unfreezes our millions. Nia chimed in, picking at her acrylic nails. We are basically giving you a chance to redeem yourself, Ava. After the way you acted when they moved to Cabo, making everything about you crying about some student loans. This is your shot to be a good daughter for once. We could have asked Ethan's friends, rich people, but Mom and Dad wanted to keep it in the family. They wanted to give you the opportunity to be useful. Useful. The word hung in the air, thick with contempt. So let me get this straight, I said, playing the part of the slow, confused victim. You want me to co-sign a loan? No, not co-sign, Cynthia said quickly. We need you to take it out, in your name. We will pay it back, obviously. Once our funds clear next week, we will pay the whole thing off. You won't pay a dime. In fact, it will probably help your credit score. We are doing you a favor. I looked down at my hands, hiding the flash of rage in my eyes. They weren't asking for a co-signer. They wanted me to be the sole borrower. They wanted to take the cash and leave me with the debt. Again. How much, I asked. $150,000, David said. I looked up. $150,000, Dad. No bank is going to give me that kind of money. I stopped myself. I barely make rent. We have a lender, David said, his eyes shifting around the room. A private lender. They specialize in high-risk situations. They don't care about your income as much as your clean record. We already filled out the paperwork. We just need you to verify your identity and sign. A private lender. That was code for loan sharks, or a predatory hard money lender with interest rates that would cripple a person for life. Or knowing them, it was just another shell company they had set up to launder money, and they needed a patsy to sign the intake forms. Why didn't you just ask me? I asked softly. Why did you try to do it behind my back yesterday? I got an alert. That is why the card was declined. Cynthia flinched. We didn't want to worry you, darling. We wanted to handle it ourselves. We were going to pay it back before you even knew it happened. We were trying to protect you. Protect me. By committing a felony in my name. Nia rolled her eyes. Oh my God, are we going to do this all day? Just sign the papers, Ava. Stop being so dramatic. We are staying in a dump because of this error. I need to get back to a hotel with room service. My back is killing me. I looked at Nia. She was truly vile. But she was also stupid. She didn't realize that by participating in this conversation, she was making herself an accomplice to conspiracy. I pretended to think about it. I bit my lip. I looked nervous. I don't know, I said. It sounds risky. If you don't pay it back, I go to jail. Or I go bankrupt. We are your parents, David shouted, slamming his hand on the table. A few diners turned to look. We gave you life. We raised you in a mansion. We gave you everything. And now, when we have a tiny administrative hiccup, you hesitate. After we let you keep that car, after we didn't sue you for emotional distress when you harassed us 2 years ago. I harassed you, I asked. You called us while we were on vacation, Cynthia said, sniffing. You ruined the first day of our retirement. It was very selfish. I took a deep breath. I had to get them to the office. I couldn't have them sign the confession here. It wouldn't be admissible if they claimed duress or confusion. I needed witnesses. I needed it recorded. Okay, I said. The table went silent. Okay. Cynthia asked, her eyes lighting up with greed. Okay, I will help. But I can't do it here. I don't have my ID or my tax info on me. You don't need tax info, David said quickly. Just the ID. I need to make sure it is done right, I said. I work as a file clerk at a law firm now. I saw Nia smirk. A file clerk. Wow. Big time. I ignored her. My boss is out of town. His office is empty. We can go there. It is quiet. I can use the notary stamp on his desk to make it official so the bank accepts it faster. And I can print out my credit report there. Cynthia clapped her hands together. See? She is useful. That is a wonderful idea, Ava. When David asked, tomorrow, I said. Noon. It is the building on Wacker Drive, the big glass one. Just tell security you are there to see. Tell them you are there to see Mr. Henderson. He is the owner. I will come down and get you, Mr. Henderson, Nia repeated. Is he rich? Maybe I should introduce myself. Ethan needs to network. Ethan finally spoke. He looked pale. Are you sure about this, Ava? If we do this, there is no going back. I looked at my brother. For a second I saw the kid I used to build forts with. I saw a flicker of conscience. Shut up, Ethan, Nia hissed. She is helping. Don't ruin it. I looked at him. I am sure, Ethan. I want to help the family. I want to put everything behind us. David stood up, smoothing his wrinkled suit. Good. It is settled. Tomorrow at noon. And Ava, try to dress a little better. If you are bringing us into a law firm, we don't want you looking like a homeless person. It reflects badly on us. I stood up. I looked them all in the eye. I will wear my best suit, I promised. Cynthia grabbed her fake bag. Come on, let's go get some real food. I can't stand the smell of this place. They walked out without paying for the coffee they didn't order. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't hug me. They just marched out the door, already counting the money they thought they were about to steal. I sat back down in the booth. I watched them get into a rusted rental van in the parking lot. I waited until they were gone. Then I pulled out my phone. I dialed Jessica, my assistant. It is on, I said. They are coming tomorrow at noon. Have the conference room ready. And Jessica. Yes, Ms. Reynolds. Call the FBI field office. Tell Agent Miller I have the targets he has been looking for. Tell him to bring handcuffs. 4 pairs. I hung up the phone and signaled the waitress. Can I get a slice of pie, I asked. Cherry. I deserved a treat. Tomorrow was going to be a very busy day. The manila folder hit the sticky table with a dull thud right between the untouched cup of coffee and the plastic sugar dispenser. My father, David, tapped the cover with a manicured fingernail that was starting to yellow at the edges. Just look it over, Ava, he said, his voice straining to sound casual, but vibrating with underlying panic. It is just standard tax documents, proof of income, assets. The lender needs to see that the co-borrower has a connection to the primary estate. It is just a formality to link our profiles so the bridge loan gets approved faster. I stared at the folder. To an untrained eye, it was just a stack of boring paper. To me, it was a crime scene waiting to be analyzed. I reached out and opened it. My hands were trembling, but not because I was scared. I forced the tremor into my fingers to sell the performance. I needed them to see a terrified daughter, not a forensic auditor who could spot a shell game from a mile away. I flipped the first page. It was a Schedule C form from 3 years ago. I scanned the lines. Gross receipts $400,000. Cost of goods sold 0. Business expenses $350,000. I paused. My eyes narrowed, slightly shielded by the loose strands of hair falling from my messy bun. You do not have $350,000 in business expenses when you are retired. I looked closer at the itemized deductions. Travel, meals, entertainment, consulting fees. Consulting fees paid to a company called Zenith Global based in the Cayman Islands. I turned the page. Another tax return. This one showed a capital loss on a property investment in Florida that I knew for a fact they never owned. It was a phantom loss manufactured to offset the tax liability from selling my childhood home. They were wiping out their gains on paper so they would not have to pay the IRS a dime. Tax evasion, Class A felony. I kept turning the pages, my heart rate slowing down into the rhythmic cold beat of a predator analyzing prey. They were sloppy. They were arrogant. They thought because I was just their disappointment of a daughter, I would not understand what I was looking at. They thought I would just see numbers. But I saw the story. I saw the greed. I saw the moment they decided the laws did not apply to them. And then I turned to page 14. It was an incorporation document for a domestic LLC. The company was called AR Holdings. It had been formed 5 years ago, right around the time I was starving in my car. I scanned the articles of organization. It was a standard setup for a holding company, usually used to protect assets, or in less legal cases to launder money. I looked for the registered agent. I looked for the list of officers. And the world stopped. There, typed in black and white, listed as the president, secretary, and treasurer of AR Holdings, was a name I knew very well. Ava Reynolds. My breath hitched. I looked at the signature at the bottom. It was my name signed in a looping, hesitant script that looked nothing like my handwriting, but was close enough to pass a casual inspection. The date next to the signature was 5 years ago. I looked up at the other documents. The consulting fees paid to the Cayman Islands. They came from AR Holdings, the phantom real estate loss. It was booked under AR Holdings. The unpaid taxes that the IRS was currently hunting for, they were filed under AR Holdings. They had not just stolen my money, they had stolen my name. For 5 years, while I was building a career on integrity and precision, my parents had been using my identity to run a money laundering operation. They had funneled every dirty dollar, every evaded tax cent, and every questionable asset through a company that legally belonged to me. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The IRS lien wasn't just on my father's pension. If they dug deep enough, the warrant wouldn't be for David Reynolds. It would be for Ava Reynolds. They were not here to borrow my credit score. They were here to frame me. They knew the investigation was closing in. They knew the house of cards was falling. They needed a fall guy, and who better than the estranged daughter they had already discarded? They wanted me to sign this new loan not to save them, but to cement my connection to the fraud. If I signed, I was validating 5 years of their crimes. I would be signing my own prison sentence. I looked up. My mother was watching me, her eyes hidden behind those ridiculous sunglasses, but I could see the tension in her jaw. Nia was checking her reflection in a spoon board. Ethan was staring at the table, his leg bouncing nervously. They knew. Ethan knew. That was why he couldn't look at me. I felt a wave of nausea followed instantly by a cold, crystalline rage. This was the ultimate betrayal. Abandoning me wasn't enough. Stealing my savings wasn't enough. They wanted to take my freedom. They wanted to trade my life for their retirement. I had to get them to the office. I had to get this on record. I needed the confession. I needed the agents. I forced a look of confusion onto my face. I let my lip quiver. I hunched my shoulders, making myself look small and overwhelmed. Mom. I whispered, my voice shaking. I do not understand some of this. It says I am the president of a company, AR Holdings. I do not remember this. Cynthia reached out and patted my hand. Her skin was cold and dry. Oh, honey, do not worry about the details. That was just a little investment vehicle your father set up for your future years ago. We were trying to build a nest egg for you. We handled all the paperwork so you would not be stressed. We were protecting you. Protecting me? By making me the face of a tax evasion scheme. But, I stammered, flipping the page back. It says this company owes. It says there are penalties. David leaned in his cologne, thick and cloying. That is the clerical error I told you about, Ava. The IRS computer made a mistake. That is why we need the bridge loan. To pay the administrative fees so we can clear your name. If we do not fix this by tomorrow, the government might come after you. We are trying to save you, Ava. The manipulation was masterful. He was twisting the knife, using fear to drive me into the trap. If I didn't sign, I was in trouble. If I signed, I was saved. It was a lie so bold, it was almost beautiful. I looked at Ethan. He flinched when our eyes met. Ethan, I said softly, did you know about this? About the company for my future? He swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed. Yeah, Ava. Mom and Dad, they always look out for us. Just sign the papers, please. He was selling me out. My baby brother was willing to let me go to federal prison so he could keep his lease on a Tesla. I closed the folder. I pulled it close to my chest, hugging it like a shield. I am scared, Dad, I said, letting a tear leak out of the corner of my eye. I do not want to go to jail. You won't go to jail, sweetheart, Cynthia cooed. Not if you sign. We will fix it all. We just need to get the loan funded. I took a deep, shuddering breath. I looked at the clock on the wall. I needed 24 hours. I needed to get the FBI warrant finalized. I needed to get the paperwork drafted for the asset forfeiture. I will do it, I said. I will help. Nia let out a loud sigh of relief. Finally. Jesus, you are dramatic. Give her a pen, David. No, I said quickly, pulling back as David reached into his pocket. Not here. I can't do it in a diner. My hands are shaking too much. And if this is legal stuff, it needs a stamp, a notary stamp, to prove it is real. So the IRS knows I am fixing it. David frowned. We don't need a notary, Ava. Just a signature. We do, I insisted, my voice rising in panic. I work at a law firm now. I file papers all day. The IRS rejects anything without a stamp. If we do it wrong, they will come for me. I can't go to jail, Dad. Please. I saw the calculation in his eyes. He thought I was an idiot, a scared file clerk who was obsessed with procedure. He didn't see the trap. Fine, he said, annoyed. Where can we get a stamp? My office, I said. Tomorrow. My boss is Mr. Henderson. He is the owner. He is out of town until Monday. His office is empty. I have the keys. I can let us in. It is private. We can use his notary seal. I know where he keeps it. And I can print out my credit report from the secure terminal so the lender doesn't reject me. Cynthia smiled. It was the smile of a wolf looking at a lamb. That sounds perfect, Ava. A law office is much more appropriate for our family business than this dump. Tomorrow at noon, I said. 110 North Wacker Drive, the glass building. Just tell security you are there to see Mr. Henderson. I will come down and get you. We will be there, David said. He reached for the folder. I will take that. No, I said, clutching it tighter. I need to keep it. I need to enter the data into the system tonight. To prep the forms, so we can just sign and go tomorrow. I want to help you, Dad. I want to fix the error. David hesitated. He didn't want to let the evidence out of his sight, but he also didn't want to spook the fish when the hook was already in the mouth. Fine, he said. But bring it tomorrow. Do not lose it. That is our lives in there, Ava. I promise, I said. I will take good care of it. I stood up. My legs felt steady. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, heavy purpose. I have to go, I said. I have to get ready. I have a lot of work to do tonight. Go! Cynthia waved her hand dismissively. And Ava wears something nice tomorrow. If you are bringing us into a high-end office, try not to look like this. She gestured at my hoodie. I looked down at my clothes. I looked back at them. I will wear my best suit, Mom, I said. I want you to be proud of me. I turned and walked out of the diner. The bell jingled behind me. I stepped out onto the sidewalk into the biting Chicago wind. I didn't feel the cold. I felt the folder pressed against my chest. I walked 2 blocks until I was sure they weren't following. Then I stopped. I pulled out my phone. I dialed the number for the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Agent Miller, I said when he answered. It is Ava Reynolds. I have the file, I have the shell company, and I have the targets. They are coming to me tomorrow at noon. Bring everything. I hung up. I hailed a taxi. I looked at the folder in my lap. They wanted to frame me for their crimes. They wanted to steal my future to pay for their past. Tomorrow they were going to learn the difference between a victim and a prosecutor, and they were going to learn it the hard way. The lobby of 110 North Wacker Drive is designed to make you feel small. It is a cathedral of glass and Italian marble soaring 50 feet high, with a security desk that looks more like the command center of a starship than a place to sign a guest book. I stood by the turnstiles, wearing my best suit, a tailored charcoal Armani, that I had bought to celebrate my first $1 million recovery for a client. I watched through the revolving doors as a rusted rental van pulled up to the curb, sputtering black smoke that stained the pristine Chicago air. My family stepped out. They paused on the sidewalk, craning their necks to look up at the 55 stories of steel towering above them. For a second, they looked like tourists lost and overwhelmed. Then David adjusted his linen jacket, Cynthia put her sunglasses back on despite the overcast sky, and they adopted that familiar, unearned swagger. They walked into the building as if they owned it, pushing past a courier with a heavy cart. I swiped my badge, and the turnstile lights flashed green. I walked over to meet them. "You are late," I said, keeping my voice low. "I told you noon. Mr. Henderson is very particular about time. If he comes back early and finds us here, I lose my job." David waved a hand dismissively, looking around the lobby with a critical eye. Traffic was terrible, and this building is a maze. Why does a lawyer need so much marble? It seems like a waste of overhead. He was critiquing the architecture of a building where the rent for a single floor cost more than his lifetime earnings. "Just follow me," I said. "And please keep your voices down. This is a professional environment." We crowded into the elevator. It was a high-speed lift that made your ears pop. I pressed the button for the 45th floor. 45. Ethan whistled. He was wearing a tracksuit that had seen better days. "That is the penthouse level, right? Your boss must be loaded." "He does okay," I said, staring straight ahead at the brushed steel doors. Nia was examining her reflection in the elevator wall, picking at a blemish on her chin. "So you are just a file clerk here, like you just sort papers, I handle documentation," I said. "That is what I said." Nia smirked. "A paper pusher. I guess it is better than living in a car, right? But still. Kind of embarrassing that you are 32 and fetching coffee for the big dogs. Ethan is going to be running his own team soon." I didn't answer. I just watched the numbers climb. 30. 40. 45. The doors slid open. The reception area was quiet. My assistant Jessica was at her desk. She looked up, her eyes widening slightly as she took in the motley crew behind me. I gave her a microscopic nod. She understood. Ms. Reynolds, she said, her voice perfectly professional. Mr. Henderson is away. The conference room is prepared. Thanks, Jessica, I said. My mother stopped. Why did she call you Ms. Reynolds? You are just a clerk. It is company policy. Mom, I lied. Everyone uses last names. It maintains decorum. Come on. I led them down the long corridor lined with modern art. They gawked at everything, the floor-to-ceiling windows showing the Chicago River winding through the city, the abstract sculptures, the silence. I opened the double doors to the main conference room. It was the jewel of the firm, a 20-foot table made of single-slab walnut leather Eames chairs, and a view that stretched all the way to Lake Michigan. Sit anywhere, I said. I need to go get the notary seal from Mr. Henderson's desk. Do not touch anything. I walked out, leaving the door slightly ajar. I didn't go to get a seal. I went to the observation room next door where a monitor showed a live feed of the conference room. I wanted to see them when they thought they were alone. On the screen, I watched them relax. David threw his folder on the table and walked to the window. Look at this view, Cynthia. This guy must be raking it in. Once we get this loan sorted and the IRS off our backs, maybe we should look at a condo in a place like this. Chicago isn't so bad in the summer. Cynthia was already rummaging through the sidebar credenza. She pulled out a crystal pitcher of water and some glasses. She poured a glass, took a sip, and made a face. Ugh, she said. It is room temperature. You would think a fancy lawyer could afford ice. She set the glass down on the walnut table without a coaster. Naya was walking around the room, running her fingers over the leather chairs. This is nice, she said, but it is a little sterile. If we had money like this, I would do gold accents. More velvet. This looks like a doctor's office. Ethan pulled out one of the chairs at the head of the table. He sat down, leaned back, and swung his muddy sneakers up onto the polished wood surface. He laced his fingers behind his head. Yeah, I could get used to this. He laughed. Hey, Dad, how long is this gonna take? I want to hit the Miracle Mile shops before they close. If Ava gets this loan, maybe she can spot me a few $100. She owes us for the hotel room anyway. She better hurry up, David said, checking his watch. I have a tea time at 3. Found a course in the suburbs that takes walk-ins. I don't want to be stuck in traffic because she is fumbling with a stamp. I watched them. The entitlement, the disrespect, the absolute unwavering belief that they were the main characters of the universe, and I was just a prop to be used and discarded. They were sitting in the center of my power feet on my table, drinking my water, planning how to spend the money they were stealing from me, and complaining that I wasn't moving fast enough. It was perfect. I walked out of the observation room. I signaled to Mr. Henderson, the firm's founding partner and my mentor. He was a silver-haired man in his 60s with a voice like gravel and a heart of iron. He was waiting in the hall with 2 men in dark suits. Ready, Ava? He asked. I smoothed the lapel of my blazer. I am ready. I walked back to the conference room doors. I didn't open them quietly this time. I threw them open with enough force that they bounced against the stops. The family jumped. Ethan scrambled to get his feet off the table, leaving a smudge of dirt on the wood. Cynthia gasped, clutching her fake bag. I strode into the room. I didn't walk like a file clerk. I walked like the person whose name was on the lease. I walked to the head of the table, the seat Ethan had just vacated. Mr. Henderson followed me in. He didn't look at my parents. He walked straight to the sidebar, picked up a fresh pitcher of ice water, and brought it to the table. He poured a glass. He set it down in front of me. Coffee, Ms. Reynolds? He asked. Or would you prefer sparkling water before we begin the proceedings? Thank you, Arthur, I said, sitting down. Sparkling is fine. My father looked confused. He looked at Mr. Henderson, then at me. Excuse me, are you the boss? Are you Mr. Henderson? Mr. Henderson smiled. It was not a warm smile. I am Arthur Henderson. Yes. But I am not the boss in this room. He gestured to me. Ava Reynolds is a senior partner at this firm. She heads our forensic accounting division. This is her conference room. I am just here to observe. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. Cynthia laughed, a high, nervous titter. What? Don't be silly. Ava works at a bakery. Or she was unemployed. She told us she was a clerk. Ava, tell him to stop joking. I looked at my mother. I let the silence stretch. I let them look at my suit. I let them look at the way I sat in the chair, comfortable, authoritative. I let them look at the view behind me, the city that I had conquered while they were playing pretend in Mexico. I am not a clerk, Mom, I said. And I don't work at a bakery. I catch thieves. That is what I do. I catch people who steal money, hide assets, and lie to the government. And I am very, very good at it. Nia made a noise in the back of her throat. But you were living in your car. I said. Because you left me there. But that was a long time ago. David stood up, his face reddening. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, Ava. But we don't have time for this. We came here to sign the loan papers. Where is the notary? Give me the pen. I have a golf game to get to. Golf, I repeated. Yes, golf. Now stop this charade. I reached under the table and pressed a button. The lights in the room dimmed. A screen descended from the ceiling with a soft whir. A projector hummed to life. Sit down, David, I said. He remained standing. I said, give me the papers. Sit down. I slammed my hand on the table. The sound cracked through the room like a whip. My father sat. I picked up a remote control. Welcome to the audit, I said. I clicked the button. The screen lit up. It was a timeline, a forensic flowchart of money. It started with a number in bold red font, $850,000. This, I said, pointing to the screen with a laser pointer, is the net proceeds from the sale of the house at 42 Maple Street, the house that you sold without telling your daughter. I clicked again. The line split into dozens of smaller streams. $300,000 transferred to an unregulated crypto exchange in Malta, lost within 6 months due to a pump and dump scam. $200,000 spent on a timeshare in Cabo that has a resale value of zero. $100,000 withdrawn in cash at various casinos in Las Vegas over a period of 4 weekends. $50,000 sent to a multi-level marketing scheme selling vitamin supplements that was shut down by the FTC last year. I looked at them. They were staring at the screen, their mouths agape. They had never seen their stupidity laid out in a graph before. It looked clinical. It looked pathetic. You didn't invest it, I said. You didn't save it. You gambled it. You wasted it. You lit it on fire. That is private financial information, David shouted, finding his voice. You hacked us. That is illegal. I am a forensic accountant, I said calmly. Finding money is my job. And when you try to open a fraudulent loan in my name using my social security number, you give me permission to investigate the risk. And the risk is astronomical. I clicked the remote again. The screen changed. Now it showed a document titled AR Holdings, LLC. This, I said, is the shell company you formed 5 years ago. You listed me as the director. You forged my signature on the incorporation documents. Cynthia shifted in her seat. We told you that was for your future. I clicked again. The screen filled with invoices, consulting fees, construction costs for properties that don't exist, wire transfers to accounts flagged for money laundering. You used this company to hide the income you didn't want to pay taxes on, I said. You used my name to build a tax shelter. You haven't paid federal income tax in 5 years. You owe the IRS $400,000 in back taxes and penalties. That is why they froze your accounts. That is why there is a lien. I looked at Ethan. And you knew. You are listed as the vice president. You signed the checks. Ethan put his head in his hands. I didn't. I just did what Dad told me. Ignorance is not a defense in federal court. Ethan, I said, I clicked the remote one last time. The screen showed a passport entry log. This, I said, is my passport record. It shows that on the date AR Holdings was incorporated, and on the dates the major fraudulent transfers were made, I was not in the state of Illinois. In fact, for the incorporation date, I was in Boston, sleeping in a Honda Civic because my parents had evicted me. I have the police report from the night security kicked me out of the Walmart parking lot to prove my location. I turned off the projector. The lights came back up. The family looked pale, washed out under the fluorescent glare. You wanted to frame me, I said softly. You came here not to borrow money, but to pin this on me. You wanted me to sign that loan so you could link my current credit to this shell company. You wanted to tell the IRS that I was the mastermind so you could cut a deal. Cynthia started to cry. It wasn't like that, Ava. We needed a way out. We thought you could handle it. You are so smart. I am smart. I agreed. Too smart to sign your confession. I opened my briefcase. I pulled out a thick stack of papers. I threw them onto the center of the table. This is not a loan application, I said. David looked at the papers. What is it? It is a full confession, I said. It is a sworn affidavit stating that you, David, and Cynthia Reynolds stole $45,000 from me 2 years ago. It states that you committed identity theft to form AR Holdings without my knowledge. It states that you forged my signature, and it admits to tax evasion. Why would we sign that? Nia screeched. She looked terrified. Her pink tracksuit suddenly seemed very flimsy armor. Because, I said, gesturing to the door. Standing outside are 2 special agents from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, Agent Miller and Agent Lewis. I called them yesterday. I sent them this entire file this morning. They are here to arrest you. The room erupted. David jumped up, knocking his chair over. You called the feds on your own parents. You stole my identity. I shouted back, slamming my hand on the table again. You tried to send me to prison? You think I am going to protect you? After you left me in the rain, after you laughed about my student loans? I looked at Ethan. And you are an officer of the company. You are liable. They are going to take you too. Nia stood up. She backed away from Ethan as if he were contagious. You said you were a regional manager. You said your parents were rich. You said this was just a mix-up. Ethan looked at her pleading. Nia, baby, please. It's just money. We can fix it. Fix it, Nia screamed. She grabbed a glass of water from the table, the free water she had mocked, and threw it in his face. You broke loser. You lied to me. You pawned my grandmother's ring last week, didn't you? You said it was being cleaned. I watched them turn on each other. It was inevitable. Rats always bite each other when the ship goes down. David was hyperventilating. He clutched his chest. I need a doctor. My heart. Sit down, Dad, I said coldly. The agents are trained in CPR. You can have your heart attack in custody. Cynthia lunged across the table. She grabbed my hand. Her nails dug into my skin. Ava, please. We are your family. You can't let them take us. We will pay you back. We will give you everything. You have nothing. I yanked my hand away. You have debt. You have lies. And now you have handcuffs. I looked at the stack of papers. Here is the deal, I said. The agents are coming in here in 2 minutes. If you sign these papers, if you admit that I had nothing to do with AR Holdings, I will give the file to the agents and tell them I am cooperating as a witness against you. It will save me the headache of a trial to clear my name. And if we don't? David wheezed. If you don't, I said, I will sue you in civil court for every penny you ever earn for the rest of your lives. I will make sure you die in prison. And I will make sure that the story of how you abandoned your daughter at an airport runs on every news channel in the country. I will humiliate you, sign the papers, admit you stole my identity, and maybe, just maybe, the judge will give you 5 years instead of 10. They looked at the door. They looked at me. They looked at the ruins of their lives projected on the blank screen behind me. David picked up the pen. His hand was shaking so bad he could barely hold it. He signed. Cynthia signed, sobbing onto the mahogany table. Ethan signed, water dripping from his face onto the page. I took the papers. I checked the signatures. I notarized them with my own stamp right there in front of them. Then I pressed the intercom button. "Jessica," I said, "send them in." The doors opened. Two men in windbreakers with IRSCI emblazoned on the back walked in. They were carrying handcuffs. I stood up. I picked up my briefcase. Mr. Henderson stood up too. He looked at my parents with a look of pure disgust. "Get them out of my office," he said to the agents, "and open a window. It smells like cheap desperation in here." I walked past my mother. She reached out for me, her fingers brushing my jacket. "Ava," she wailed. "I gave birth to you." I stopped. I looked down at her. "You should have thought about that when you left me at gate 24, I said. I walked out the door. I didn't look back. I heard the click of handcuffs. I heard the Miranda rights being read. I walked down the hall past the art, past the view of the river. I felt light. I felt clean. I had my name back. I had my life back. And I had a plane to catch. The heavy oak double doors swung open with a slow, deliberate weight that commanded silence. My family straightened in their leather chairs, fixing their ties and smoothing their fake designer clothes. They put on their best masks of respectable victims ready to charm the wealthy owner of the firm. An older man with silver hair and a suit that cost more than my brother's entire life entered the room first. This was Arthur Henderson. He walked with the quiet confidence of a man who had sued governments and won. David stood up immediately, extending a hand and flashing his salesman smile. "Mr. Henderson, thank you so much for meeting with us. We apologize for the intrusion, but your clerk said Arthur walked right past my father's outstretched hand." He did not even look at him. He walked to the head of the table, the seat of power, and he pulled the heavy leather chair out. He turned to the door. "After you, Ms. Reynolds," he said. I walked in. I was not holding a notepad. I was not holding a tray of coffee. I was holding a remote control. I walked past my father, who was still standing with his hand extended to empty air. I walked past my mother, whose mouth had fallen open in a rictus of confusion. I walked past Naya and Ethan, who looked like children caught playing in a room they were not allowed to enter. I sat down in the chair Arthur held for me. I crossed my legs. I placed the remote on the table. Arthur pushed the chair in for me, then walked to the side of the room and sat in one of the lower associate chairs against the wall. He crossed his arms and looked at me with the expression of a proud teacher watching a star pupil. David was still standing, blinking rapidly. I don't understand." "Ava, get up. That is Mr. Henderson's chair. You are going to get fired." I looked at him. I didn't blink. "Sit down, David," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it had the acoustic authority of the room behind it. He sat. He didn't want to, but the cognitive dissonance was making his knees weak. Cynthia let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh. "This is a joke, right? Is this some kind of prank?" "Ava, stop playing pretend. We need to sign the papers." I picked up the remote. I pointed it at the ceiling. The blinds automatically lowered, plunging the room into a twilight gloom. The projector screen descended from the ceiling with a soft, expensive hum. I pressed the power button. A beam of white light cut through the room, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air before hitting the screen with crystal clarity. On the screen, in bold black letters against a stark white background, were the words, "Forensic Audit, the Reynolds Estate." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the polished walnut table. I laced my fingers together. "Welcome to your audit," I said. "My name is Ava Reynolds. I am a senior partner at Henderson & Associates. I specialize in forensic financial investigation and asset recovery, and this is not a loan meeting. This is a federal indictment preview." The silence in the room was absolute. It was the sound of oxygen leaving a vacuum. Nia was the first to break it. You are a partner." But you said you were a clerk. You were living in your car. I was, I said coldly. That was the motivation. Poverty is an excellent teacher, Nia. It taught me to count every penny, especially the ones that were stolen from me. I clicked the remote. The screen changed. It showed a bank statement. The header read, Sale proceeds, 42 Maple Street. The balance was $850,000. This is where we started 2 years ago. I said, my voice clinical and detached. You sold my childhood home. You cashed out. You told me you were going to live like kings in Cabo. I clicked again. The screen fractured into a pie chart. The sections were labeled in angry bright colors. Let us look at the burn rate, I said. $300,000 transferred to an unregulated cryptocurrency exchange based in Malta. The account was drained in 4 months. You bought high and sold low, David. You listened to a guru on YouTube instead of a financial advisor. David turned a sickly shade of gray. That was a sure thing. The market crashed. It wasn't my fault. I ignored him. I clicked again. $200,000 spent on a timeshare membership at the Azure Paradise Resort. I pulled the contract. It has no resale value. It is a leasehold, not a freehold. You don't own the property. You own the right to use it for 2 weeks a year. You paid $200,000 for a vacation rental you could have booked on Expedia for $2,000. Cynthia gasped. That isn't true. The salesman said it was an investment. He said we could rent it out. He lied, Mom, I said. And you believed him because you are greedy and you are lazy. I clicked again. $150,000 withdrawn in cash from ATMs at the Bellagio, the Wynn, and Caesar's Palace over 6 weekends. I looked at my father. You didn't lose it in the market, Dad. You lost it at the blackjack table. The IRS tracks cash withdrawals over $10,000. It is all here. I clicked again. The final slice of the pie appeared. It was labeled Global Health Nutrisystems, $50,000 sent to a multi-level marketing scheme selling vitamin patches, I said. This company was shut down by the FTC last year for being a pyramid scheme. You bought a garage full of vitamins that expired in 1999. Naya made a choking sound. That was my business idea, she whispered. We were going to be diamond-level distributors. You are diamond-level idiots, I said. I stood up and walked to the screen. The light from the projector washed over me, making my shadow loom over them. You blew it all, I said. $850,000 in less than 2 years. You didn't invest it. You didn't save it. You set it on fire, and now you are broke. You are staying in a motel in Cicero because you can't afford a deposit on an apartment. David slammed his fist on the table. Enough. So we made some bad calls. That is our business. That is our money. We earned it. You earned it by selling the roof over my head, I countered. But we are not here to talk about your stupidity. We are here to talk about your crimes. I clicked the remote. The screen flashed red. A new document appeared. AR Holdings, LLC. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. My parents froze. They looked like deer in headlights if the deer were also guilty of tax fraud. This, I said, pointing to the screen, is a shell company. It was incorporated 5 years ago in the state of Delaware. It lists 1 officer, 1 director, 1 responsible party. I clicked. My name appeared on the screen in massive letters. Ava Reynolds. And here is the signature on the incorporation documents, I said. I zoomed in on the signature. It was a shaky, looped scrawl. Cynthia looked away. She couldn't look at the screen. She couldn't look at me. You used my identity to open this company, I said. You used my social security number. You forged my signature. And for 5 years you have been funneling income through this entity to avoid paying taxes. You laundered the money from the house sale through here before you sent it to crypto. You hid your income. And you put my name on the door. We were saving it for you, Cynthia stammered. It was a trust. It was a tax shelter. I shouted, my voice finally breaking its calm facade. It was a vehicle for fraud. You owe the IRS $400,000 in back taxes and penalties on this company. And because my name is on it, they aren't looking for you. They are looking for me. I walked back to the table and leaned over my father. You came here today to get me to sign a loan. But that wasn't the plan, was it? You didn't just want the cash. You wanted to link my current clean credit profile to this toxic shell company. You wanted to create a paper trail that proved I was active in the business. You wanted to frame me. David wiped sweat from his upper lip. Ava, be reasonable. We are family. We just needed a bridge. If you sign the loan, we can pay the taxes. We can fix it. With what money, I asked. You have nothing. You are radioactive. I clicked the remote one last time. The screen changed to a timeline. It showed 2 dates. Date 1, incorporation of AR Holdings, 5 years ago. June 12th. Date 2, the wire transfer of the house proceeds. 2 years ago. May 28th. I pointed to the first date. This is the day you claim I walked into a lawyer's office in Chicago and signed these papers to start this company, I said. I clicked. A scanned police report appeared next to the date. But on June 12th, 5 years ago, I wasn't in Chicago. I wasn't in a boardroom. I was in Boston. Specifically, I was in the parking lot of a Walmart in Saugus, Massachusetts. I read from the report on the screen. Responding officer found subject sleeping in a 2005 Honda Civic. Subject stated she had been evicted by her parents and had nowhere to go. Subject was advised to move the vehicle. I looked at them. I have an alibi, Mom, I said softly. My alibi is your cruelty. You made me homeless. You put me on the street. And because I was sleeping in my car in Boston fighting for my life, I can prove I wasn't in Chicago helping you commit tax fraud. The police report proves it. My location data proves it. I looked at the second date. And on the day you sold the house, I was at the airport calling you begging for my student loan money while you laughed at me from Mexico. I have the phone records. I have the flight manifests. I turned off the projector. The room plunged back into darkness for a second before my eyes adjusted to the gray light filtering through the blinds. I walked over to the light switch and flipped it. The sudden brightness made them flinch. You tried to frame me, I said. But you forgot one thing. You forgot that you had already destroyed me. You forgot that the wreckage you left behind created a paper trail that exonerates me and convicts you. I walked back to my chair and sat down. I pulled a thick stack of documents from my briefcase. They hit the table with a heavy final sound. This is not a loan application, I said. This is a sworn affidavit. It states that David and Cynthia Reynolds committed identity theft. It states that you forged my signature. It admits that I had no knowledge of AR Holdings. And it accepts full liability for the unpaid taxes and the fraud. Why would we sign that? Ethan asked, his voice trembling. He looked like he was about to be sick. Because I said, looking at the door. I didn't just invite you here for coffee. I nodded to Arthur. He pressed a button on the intercom. Send them in, he said. The conference room doors opened. 2 men in windbreakers walked in. They were not wearing suits. They were wearing badges on chains around their necks. The letters on their jackets were yellow and bold. IRSCI. Criminal Investigation. David jumped up, knocking his chair over. Who are these people? These are Special Agents Miller and Lewis, I said. I called them yesterday. I sent them the file this morning. They have been listening in the observation room. You wore a wire? Nia screamed. She stood up, backing away from the table. You wore a wire on your own family. You stole my identity, I roared back, my voice echoing off the glass walls. You tried to send me to prison to save your own skins. You aren't family. You are parasites. Agent Miller stepped forward. He was a large man with a face like a slab of granite. David Reynolds. Cynthia Reynolds. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of tax evasion, wire fraud, and identity theft. Cynthia let out a wail that sounded like a dying animal. She lunged across the table and grabbed my hand. Her nails dug into my skin. Ava, stop this. Tell them it is a mistake. We are your parents. You can't let them take us. I looked at her hand on mine. The same hand that had slapped me when I cried about the tuition money. The same hand that had waved goodbye at the airport while she held a first-class ticket. I pulled my hand away. I wiped it on my suit pants as if she had left a stain. I can let them take you, I said. And I will. I pushed the affidavit toward them. But I am feeling generous, I said. If you sign this right now, if you clear my name completely and admit to everything, I will tell the agents that I am willing to cooperate as a witness. It might save you from the maximum sentence. If you don't sign, I will sue you civilly until you don't even own the clothes on your back, and then I will testify at your sentencing hearing and beg the judge to give you 20 years. Sign the papers, Dad. It is the only deal you are going to get. David looked at the agents. He looked at the handcuffs on their belts. He looked at me. He realized finally that he wasn't the main character anymore. He was just a line item in my ledger, and I was closing the account. Give me the pen, he whispered. The pen scratched across the paper with a sound that seemed deafening in the silence of the conference room. My father David signed his name with a trembling hand, the loops of the letters jagged and uneven. He pushed the affidavit away from him as if it were burning hot to the touch. My mother, Cynthia, signed next, her tears leaving wet spots on the legal document. Finally, Ethan signed, sniffling like a child who had just been scolded on the playground. I picked up the papers. I checked every signature. I stamped my notary seal on the bottom of each page with a heavy, rhythmic thud. 1, 2, 3. It was done. The trap was sprung. I handed the stack of documents to Agent Miller. He took them without a word, sliding them into an evidence bag. Then he reached for his belt. The metallic click of handcuffs unlatching echoed off the glass walls. David Reynolds, Cynthia Reynolds, Ethan Reynolds. Agent Miller said, his voice devoid of emotion. You are under arrest for tax evasion, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit identity theft, and money laundering. David jumped up, knocking his chair backward. It crashed onto the floor. Wait. We signed the papers. Ava said if we signed, you would go easy. She said she would be a witness for us. I stood up, smoothing the front of my charcoal suit. I looked my father in the eye. I said I would be a witness, Dad. I didn't say I would be a witness for the defense. I am the star witness for the prosecution. I am giving them the audit trail. I am giving them the bank records, and now I am giving them your signed confession. David's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. You lied to us. You tricked us. I didn't trick you, I said calmly. I audited you, and you failed. Agent Miller stepped forward. Turn around, hands behind your back. That was when the facade finally cracked. That was when the family I had spent 30 years trying to please, the family that had presented a mask of unity and superiority to the world, dissolved into a pack of starving wolves. It wasn't my idea, David screamed, pointing a shaking finger at my mother. It was her. It was Cynthia. She is the one who wanted the timeshare. She is the one who demanded we fly first class. I told her we should invest the money. I told her we needed to pay the taxes. She wouldn't listen. She said she deserved a retirement. She spent it all on clothes and jewelry. I am just the husband. I just did what she said. Cynthia let out a shriek of outrage. She lunged at him, her fake Louis Vuitton bag swinging from her arm. You coward! You spineless little man! You told me you had a system. You told me the crypto was a sure thing. You gambled it away. You sat at the blackjack table and lost $50,000 in a night, and then came back to the hotel room and told me you were networking. Don't you dare pin this on me. She turned to Agent Miller, her mascara running down her cheeks in black rivulets. Officer, please. I didn't know. I am just a housewife. My husband handles the finances. And my son, she pointed at Ethan, who was cowering against the window. We did it for him. He needed a car. He needed an apartment. He is the one who pressured us. He said he would kill himself if he didn't have the lifestyle. We were being good parents. We sacrificed everything for him. Ethan's eyes went wide. Mom, you are blaming me. You told me the money was limitless. You told me Ava forfeited her share. You told me to sign the checks for the shell company. I didn't even know what I was signing. You are 30 years old, Ethan, David shouted. You should have known better. You are a leech. You have never worked a day in your life. We ruined ourselves trying to support your laziness. I watched them. I stood at the head of the table, my arms crossed, and I watched them tear each other apart. It was grotesque. It was pathetic. And it was the most satisfying thing I had ever seen. They were stripping away the layers of pretense, revealing the rot underneath. There was no love here. There was no loyalty. There was only survival. Nia was standing by the door, her hand on the handle. She looked disgusted. She looked like she had stepped in something foul and was trying to wipe it off her shoe. I am leaving, she announced, her voice shrill. I am not a part of this. I didn't sign anything. I am calling a lawyer and I am filing for divorce. Ethan, you are a loser. I can't believe I wasted 3 years on you. You told me you were rich. She opened the door to leave. Not so fast, Nia, I said. My voice stopped her. She turned around, a sneer on her face. What do you want, paper pusher? You got them. Leave me out of it. I am the victim here. Are you? I asked. I picked up the remote control one last time. I clicked it. The screen changed. It showed a property deed. A condo in downtown Chicago. Nia's condo. The one she had bought before she met Ethan. The one she bragged about constantly. This is your apartment, right? I asked. Yes, so what? It is in my name. You can't touch it. I clicked again. A new document appeared over the deed. It was a home equity line of credit agreement, a HELOC, dated 2 weeks ago, for $100,000. Do you recognize this loan? I asked. Nia frowned. I didn't take out a loan. I own that place free and clear. My dad bought it for me. I zoomed in on the signature line. It was Nia's name, but the handwriting was shaky. It looked familiar. Ethan forged your signature, Nia, I said. He took out a second mortgage on your condo 14 days ago. He needed cash to pay off a bookie in Vegas. The money was wired to an account in the Cayman Islands and then disappeared. Nia froze. She looked at the screen. She looked at Ethan. Ethan, she whispered. Tell me she is lying. Ethan was staring at his shoes. I was going to pay it back, babe. Once the bridge loan came through, I swear. It was just a temporary fix. You mortgaged my house, Nia screamed. And the ring, I added. I couldn't resist. I clicked the remote again. A pawn shop receipt appeared. Your engagement ring, the 3-carat diamond you flash at everyone. Ethan pawned the real one 6 months ago. He replaced the stone with a high-grade cubic zirconia. He got $12,000 for the diamond. He spent it on bottle service at a club in Miami. Nia looked down at her hand. She looked at the ring she had been so proud of. She let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. You stole my house, she said, her voice trembling with rage. You stole my ring. She didn't wait for an answer. She crossed the room in 3 strides. She didn't look like a pampered princess anymore. She looked like a fury. She launched herself at Ethan. She tackled him into the window. Her nails raked across his face. She was screaming a primal, wordless sound of pure hatred. Ethan tried to cover his face, cowering as she rained blows down on him. Get off me! You are crazy! Ethan yelled. You ruined me! Nia shrieked. She grabbed a heavy glass vase from the sidebar and raised it. Agent Miller moved fast. He grabbed Nia's arm before she could bring the vase down on Ethan's skull. Agent Lewis grabbed Ethan. That is enough. Everyone settle down. They separated them. Ethan was bleeding from a scratch on his cheek. Nia was panting, her hair wild, her eyes manic. You are all going downtown, Agent Miller said. He cuffed David. He cuffed Cynthia. He cuffed Ethan. Wait, Nia said, struggling against the agent's grip. I didn't do anything illegal. I am the victim. He stole from me. You can file a police report from the station, ma'am, Agent Lewis said. But right now, you are a material witness to a federal crime scene, and you just committed assault. You are coming with us. He cuffed Nia. The room was suddenly quiet save for the heavy breathing of four people who had just realized their lives were over. Mr. Henderson walked over to the window. He opened it a crack. The cold Chicago air rushed in, cleansing the room of the scent of sweat and fear. "Get them out of here," he said to the agents. They began to march them out. David was weeping silently, his head hung low. Ethan was staring blankly at the wall in shock. Naya was muttering curses under her breath, but Cynthia stopped. As Agent Miller led her past me, she dug her heels into the carpet. She turned to me. Her face was a mask of tragedy. "Ava," she wailed. "Ava, look at me. I am your mother. I carried you. I gave birth to you. How can you do this? How can you let strangers take me away?" I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had dropped me off at an airport curb like a bag of unwanted trash. I looked at the woman who had laughed when I told her I was homeless. I looked at the woman who had tried to frame me for a felony because she was too selfish to pay her taxes. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel sadness. I felt a profound, icy sense of closure. I leaned in close, so only she could hear me. "Do you remember what you said to me?" I asked softly. "On the phone. When I was standing in the rain." She blinked, confused. "What?" "You told me I was 30 years old. You told me you were done parenting. You told me to handle it." I straightened up. I smoothed my blazer. "So handle it." "Mom?" I said. Agent Miller pulled her arm. She stumbled. She looked back at me one last time, her eyes wide with the realization that she had created the monster that was now devouring her. "Ava. Please." "Goodbye, Cynthia," I said. The doors closed. The sound of their footsteps faded down the hallway. I stood there for a long time. Mr. Henderson didn't speak. He just walked over to the sidebar and poured 2 glasses of scotch. He handed one to me. "To the audit," he said. I took the glass. "To the audit." I drank it in one swallow. It burned, but it was a good burn. It felt like cleansing fire. 6 months later. The Gulfstream jet banked left, beginning its descent. I looked out the window. The ocean was a brilliant, impossible turquoise. The sand was white. The coastline of Cabo San Lucas stretched out below me, a playground at the edge of the world. I adjusted my seat to the upright position. The flight attendant, a young woman with a bright smile, walked down the aisle. "Can I get you anything else before we land, Ms. Reynolds? Champagne?" "Yes," I said. "A glass of your best champagne." "Thank you." She brought it in a crystal flute. I took a sip. It was cold and crisp. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I had turned it on as soon as we hit the lower altitude. There was a notification on the screen. A voicemail. I looked at the number. It was a collect call from the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Chicago. I knew who it was. The trial was scheduled to start next week. They were desperate. They wanted to cut a deal. They wanted to beg. They probably wanted to ask for money for the commissary. I didn't listen to it. I didn't even feel the temptation. I pressed the block caller button. Then I went into my settings. I selected block all calls from this facility. I deleted the voicemail. I looked back out the window. We were landing. I had rented a private villa on the cliffs. I had 2 weeks of vacation time stored up. I planned to sit by the pool. I planned to read books. I planned to drink margaritas. My parents had come here to run away from their lies. I was coming here to enjoy my truth. The wheels touched the runway with a smooth, confident bump. I took another sip of champagne. I was Ava Reynolds. I was debt-free. I was family-free. And I had handled it. The screen faded to black. The sound of my pen scratching against the affidavit was the loudest thing in the room. It was a sharp final sound like a zipper closing on a body bag. I signed my name with a flourish, the ink glistening wet and black on the white page. Ava Reynolds. Witness, victim, survivor. I capped the pen and slid the document across the mahogany table to Agent Miller. He picked it up, scanned the signature, and nodded once. It was a small movement, but it signaled the end of my family's life as they knew it. "Thank you, Ms. Reynolds," Agent Miller said, his voice deep and grave. "We have everything we need." He turned to his partner. "Execute the warrants." The metallic rasp of handcuffs being pulled from leather holsters echoed off the glass walls of the conference room. My father, David, flinched at the sound. He looked at the agents, then at the view of the Chicago skyline, and finally at me. His face was gray, the artificial tan looking like old paint on a crumbling wall. "You are really doing this," he whispered. "You are sending your own father to prison." I looked him in the eye, my expression as still as a frozen lake. "I am not sending you anywhere, Dad. The tax code is sending you. The fraud statutes are sending you. I am just the person who turned on the lights so they could see the crime scene." David hung his head as Agent Lewis pulled his arms behind his back. The click of the cuffs was a mechanical punctuation mark on his career of lies. Ethan was next. He was sobbing openly now, snot running down his face, a pathetic figure in his stained tracksuit. He looked like a child who had lost his mother in a grocery store, not a 30-year-old man who had conspired to commit federal crimes. "I didn't mean to," Ethan blubbered as the cold steel locked around his wrists. "I just wanted the car. I just wanted to be cool. Ava, please, tell them I didn't know." "You knew enough to sign the checks, Ethan," I said softly. "You knew enough to spend the money. You are old enough to know that nothing is free." Then it was Cynthia's turn. My mother stood up slowly. She smoothed her skirt with trembling hands. She looked at the agent approaching her. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were wide, filled with a terror that was finally completely real. The delusion was gone. The mask of the wealthy matriarch had shattered, leaving only a scared, selfish woman facing the consequences of her own greed. "Ava," she said, her voice trembling. "Ava, baby. Look at me." I looked at her. "I am your mother," she pleaded, tears cutting tracks through her heavy makeup. "I carried you. I gave birth to you. I fed you. Doesn't that count for anything? You can't let strangers take me away in chains. I am sorry. I am so, so sorry. I love you, Ava. Please, save me." She lunged forward, grabbing the lapel of my jacket. Her grip was desperate, clawing. "Save me!" she screamed. "I am your mother." I looked down at her hands. I remembered those hands pushing a box of my childhood belongings toward the curb in the rain. I remembered those hands waving a dismissive goodbye as she walked toward a first-class security checkpoint. I remembered those hands holding a phone while she laughed at me for being homeless. I reached up and peeled her fingers off my suit one by one. I stepped back, creating a distance that would never be bridged again. "I remember the last thing you said to me before you got on that plane to Cabo," I said, my voice calm and clear. She blinked, confusion warring with panic. "What, you told me I was 30 years old," I said. "You told me you were done parenting. You told me to handle it." I straightened my cuffs. I looked her dead in the eye. "So handle it, Mom." She let out a wail that sounded like something breaking. Agent Miller took her arm and turned her around. The handcuffs clicked. They marched them out. My father weeping silently. My brother stumbling blindly. My mother screaming my name until the heavy oak doors swung shut, cutting off the sound. Silence rushed back into the room. It was heavy and sweet. Mr. Henderson walked over to the window and opened the blinds, letting the afternoon sun flood the space. He looked at me with a nod of respect. "You handled that well, Ava," he said. I picked up my briefcase. I felt light. I felt weightless. I handled it. I agreed. 6 months later. The cabin of the Gulfstream jet was cool and smelled of expensive leather and fresh orchids. I adjusted my seat, reclining it slightly as the captain announced our initial descent. I looked out the window. Below me, the Pacific Ocean was a sheet of hammered turquoise stretching out to meet the white sands of the Baja Peninsula. Cabo San Lucas. The irony was not lost on me. My parents had come here to run away from their debts. They had come here to spend my money on a fantasy life they hadn't earned. I was coming here to celebrate. I was coming here on my own dime with my own money earned through my own hard work. I had rented a private villa on the cliffs, the kind with an infinity pool that dropped off into the ocean. I had 2 weeks of vacation time. I planned to sleep. I planned to read. I planned to drink vintage tequila and listen to the waves. A flight attendant appeared at my elbow. "Ms. Reynolds, would you like a glass of champagne before we land?" I smiled. "Yes, I would love one." She placed a crystal flute on my tray table. The bubbles rose in a steady golden stream. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I had turned it on as soon as we crossed the border. There was a notification on the screen, a voicemail. I looked at the number. It was a collect call from the Metropolitan Correctional Center in downtown Chicago. I knew who it was. The plea deals had been rejected. The trial was starting next week. They were desperate. They wanted money for a better lawyer. They wanted money for the commissary. They wanted to beg. I stared at the number. For a second, I remembered the little girl who just wanted her mother to love her. I remembered the teenager who wanted her father to be proud. But that girl was gone. She had died in a Honda Civic in a Boston winter. The woman sitting in this seat was the one who survived. I did not press play. I pressed the info button. I scrolled down to the bottom of the contact options. Block this caller. I tapped it. Confirm block, yes. I went into my settings. I set my phone to do not disturb. I picked up the champagne glass. I looked out the window as the wheels of the jet touched down on the runway with a smooth, confident bump. I took a sip. It tasted like victory. My name is Ava Reynolds. I am debt-free. I am family-free. And I handled it. The screen faded to black. Here is a reflection on the lessons learned from Ava Reynolds' journey, followed by a call to action. The story of Ava Reynolds teaches us a profound and necessary lesson about the true nature of resilience and the definition of family. The most striking takeaway is that rock bottom is not a burial place, it is a foundation. When Ava was stripped of her home, her savings, and her support system at 30 years old, she did not allow herself to be defined by her victimhood. Instead, she transmuted her grief into a cold, unwavering determination to succeed. Her journey from a freezing Honda Civic to a corner office in a Chicago skyscraper serves as a powerful reminder that while we cannot control the betrayal we face, we have absolute autonomy over our response. Furthermore, the narrative deconstructs the dangerous myth of unconditional familial loyalty. It illustrates that family is defined by behavior, not blood. Ava's parents and brother believed their shared DNA gave them a license to abuse and exploit her, assuming she would always be there to save them. Ava's refusal to offer them a free pass, choosing instead to hold them legally accountable, teaches us that boundaries are essential for self-preservation. True justice isn't about petty revenge. It is about allowing people to face the natural legal consequences of their actions. By choosing her own dignity over their comfort, Ava proved that sometimes the most empowering thing you can do is close the door on the people who left you in the rain. If this story of turning tragedy into triumph and justice resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about resilience and reclaiming your power. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice to cut off a toxic family member to save your own future? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you handled it.